odd times we live in, weird times that we live in reality, the Chicago Bulls win a game and Bulls fans are mad on both sides. You have pro-tankers, you have anti-tankers, you have everybody that's all upset about whatever the hell is going on with the Chicago Bulls and winning a prime key tank game against the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about why and what I'm taking away from the Chicago Bulls, win or lose. And the fact of the matter is, should you want players on your team that aren't at least trying to win? We're talking about all that plus more on today's Chicago Bulls Central. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And the Chicago Bulls won a key tank game against the Memphis Grizzlies. This was an opportunity for the Chicago Bulls to gain some ground on the Memphis Grizzlies that sit one spot ahead of them in the tanking standings, right? So I want to be clear to say tanking standings because I'll talk about it as if to rise up the tank, not rise up the actual win-loss column, right? The Bulls came into this one with a chance to gain a whole game on the Memphis Grizzlies in the tanking race if they would have lost this game. The Chicago Bulls won the game. So now the Bulls sit 4.5 games behind the Memphis Grizzlies for the 8th best in the lottery odds, and they sit 5.5 games behind the Dallas Mavericks for the 7th best odds in the lottery. Now, what does that mean for the Bulls? That means that the Bulls currently sit right now still at number 9. They still have a 20.3% chance to get into the top 4, and we'll see if that ends up happening for them. Now, the downside of this is also that the Bulls now go back to being only a half a game ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks at the 9th seed, which the Bucks, if they continue to lose, they can pass up the Chicago Bulls and get that 9th seed. The Bulls can fall down to number 10. And that's really the reality of it. When you look at the tanking part of it, if the Bulls do fall down to the number 10 spot, they will fall from a 20.3% chance at a top 4 pick and a 4.5% chance at the number 1 overall pick down to 13.9% at a top 4 pick and 3% at the number 1 overall pick. So it is a considerable drop down as far as in percentage chances if you do that. But like I said in the intro, to me, I don't want players on my team that aren't at least trying to win. Franchises tank. Players don't tank. Some coaches are implicit in the tank as well. Somebody pointed out, and it's good, but typically coaches are going to coach to win. Now, they may manipulate some lineups to have players out there, but, at the end of the day, that's just the reality of it, right? I get it. I think that, fans, though, do sometimes need to be reminded that typically, and I would say probably rarely ever, unless, you're DeJounte Porter and betting on a game, is that most players aren't actively trying to lose games. Even when you see some of the worst franchises, like, the 76ers that tanked for a long time. That's why they had to make sure that team was so bad, which is what hurt the development of some of their players. The Utah Jazz tanking for so long. It's even interesting to see, next season with the Jazz making a shift towards actually competing. What does that look like for them, right? Those are going to be interesting things to watch out for to see what happens with that team. But, it's rare that players are going to tank. And, that's just the reality of it. I get it, the lottery odds, and we're all obsessing over the lottery, the ping pong balls and all that type of stuff that go into the NBA draft lottery. But the reality of it is that, and this is the level-headed part that I'm trying to have. Whether you're a pro-taker, whether you're anti-taker, whatever it is, none of it's in our control. None of it's in our control. And so here's the thing. Every fan has their reasoning of why. Now, you could agree with it, you can disagree with it, you can understand, you cannot understand. For me, I look at it and I say understanding and agreement are two different things. I can understand exactly what pro-tankers and where they're coming from in it. I don't have to agree with them to understand their point, right? I understand the same thing of anti-takers and the fact of that they want to see their team try to win basketball games. I understand that completely. The reality of it all comes down to it's none of our decision. None of us, no matter how much you sit there and wish and watching your chair and watch in your armchair when you're watching the Chicago Bulls play basketball, does it have any impact on what the Bulls are deciding to do? So rather than attack somebody for what their thought process is and what they want to see for the team, just realize it. Everybody they have their own reasoning. You don't have to agree with it, but to try to understand it, right? I just want to see a little bit more kind of calmness. I hate seeing what this tank in half a season is doing to Bulls fans. Right now, I've seen people that I've seen have civil conversations and comments before completely attacking each other. And it's crazy when me, as crazy as I am the one saying, hey, let's calm down here and let's chill out a little bit, right? Like, I'm the one who just released a diss track on Matt Peck. Like, let's all calm down a little bit, right? So let's chill on it. It is what it is. It's not in any of our control. And the reality of it is that the Bulls are going to do what the Bulls are going to do. We're going to need lottery luck one way or another. That's just the reality of it. And so that part has at least brought me some peace in the sense that, it's not in my control. So, we're going to need luck. Otherwise, just draft the right guy where you are, and we'll see what the future is going to hold for the Bulls. But I do want to talk about some of the players that have slowly but surely started putting some things together. And I'm going to actually start with a player that, some people may tune out for me talking about this player, but I'm going to talk about Rob Dillingham first. Over the last 3 games, right? Small sample size. I'm not saying that let's take these 3 games and extrapolate. Even last night, 10 of his points were scored in the fourth quarter of the game when the game was already decided. We were up by about 20 points when he started turning it on. But over the last 3 games, Rob Dillingham is averaging 13 points on 47% shooting from the field and 40% shooting from 3. That's solid for him. Like, and again, somebody who was marked as a scorer coming into this league, I really do like seeing that he's starting to like put stuff together a little bit more. But it's the other things that he's doing. He's averaging 3.3 rebounds, with often being the smallest player on the court, 5 assists, 1.7 steals, and only 2 turnovers per game. And that is the thing that's really hurt Rob Dillingham over his career. I've said it, multiple times. Pat has said it. I think some other people said it as well. I continue to be impressed more with Rob Dillingham's court vision and his facilitating. And I really think that is where he can kind of make his mark. And he's playing behind Trey Jones, which is a player with similar body style, especially when they came into the league, that can really mentor him on why being able to manipulate the defense and set up other guys can lead you to score. Now, I will say this. We see from Trey Jones a lot. Trey Jones sometimes passes up open shots because he's not a scorer. Those are shots that Rob Dillingham is probably going to take, but teams play Trey Jones the way that they do because of his passing, and so Rob Dillingham can learn a lot from that. So those 3.3 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.7 steals that he's averaging is really good. Now, I'm still going to say this. I'm going to pump the brakes. Rob Dillingham still has a lot more that he's going to have to show if he's ever going to want to be a part of a rotation consistently. Keep in mind, the only reason he's playing now is because Jaden Ivey, Colin Sexton, and Anfernee Simons are out, and Isaac Okoro as well, right? Like, those guys are out. That's why you're seeing Rob Dillingham get the minutes that he can. But I'm not going to knock him for it because he's making the most of the opportunity. That's what you need to do, is make the most of your opportunity, try to turn some heads, try to show the coaching staff and the people here like, hey, maybe there is something in what Rob Dillingham has skill-wise still that is left untapped. It's only his second year. What can he bring to the table consistently? And if he's going to do that, okay, cool. There's going to be an opportunity here for him, maybe. Right now he is a guard, which is one of our deepest positions, and it's going to shape up to continue to be one of our deepest positions, more than likely, right? We'll see what they do in that, but we'll see what Rob Dillingham can bring. Overall, for 3 games, Rob Dillingham has continued to have some solid play. Modest Buzelis, though, and I'm going to go the last 10 games for Modest Buzelis. He's averaging 21 points, 21.4 points on 45% shooting from the field, 35% shooting from 3. Why I like those numbers is because those are more realistic numbers. It's not like over the last 10 games, Modest Buzelis is shooting like 45% from 3, something that like may not be sustainable. He's shooting 35% from 3, which is a solid number for somebody who came into this league not known as a 3-point shooter. I've said it before, though. I would like to see him be a little bit more choosy with his 3-pointers, and they could probably, in cutting that down and taking better 3-point shots than the number that he's taken, he can probably get that up to about 38%. I really think that, and that would be something, a mark that I use for Modest Buzelis next season. But he's also averaging 6.7 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.6 blocks, and 1 steal per game as well. Modest Buzelis over the last 10 games is flashing all of the potential that we've known that he's had, right? And this isn't just March. It goes back further than March. So anybody who's like, well, it's March basketball. Like, even though I think that's a stupid thing, it's not just that. But Modest is showing that, hey, listen, there's still tons of upside here for me. And he's shown himself to be an NBA. He's going to be an NBA starter. The question with Modest is, how good can he be? That continues to be the question for him. How good can Modest Buzelis be? And the sky's really still the limit for Modest, but he's going to have to start refining that skill. He's taking players off the dribble more. I'd still would like to see a little bit more mid-range from him. Again, that's kind of more on Billy Donovan. Like I already pointed out, I would like to see him be a little bit more choosy and selective with his three-point shots. I would like to see him get to the free throw line as well. Like that was a mark that I came in with Josh Giddey and Kobe White, this season. When I did my whole preseason things that I want to see each Bulls player improve on in the season, I would really like to see Matas Buzelis with his athleticism, with his quick first step, with his length, is get to the free throw line a little bit more. Now, he's tripled his free throws from his rookie season till now. I want to be clear there. He went from going to the free throw line 1.4 times last season to 3.1 this season. So there's there. But I think Matas, with everything that he has there as far as the athleticism and those type of things, it should be a nice mark for him to get to about 5.5 free throws per game. I think if he can average that with the growth that he's had three-point shooting-wise, I think there's something to be said there about Matas Buzelis. He's doubled his three-point shot attempts, kept the same percentage last year at 36%. So you start getting to the free throw line a little bit more. I think that we're going to see Matas Buzelis regularly average between 18 and 20 points per game if he does that. But this stretch has been really good for Matas. Again, this is kind of what you want to see from him as a player, right? Take away whatever you think the Bulls' goal should be in winning or losing games. When you talk about the goal for Matas Buzelis as a player and a player that has a future on this team, he's showing a lot of those things. Next up, Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey over that same stretch is averaging 17.2 points per game on 46% shooting from the field, 44% shooting from three. He's also averaging 9 rebounds, 9.7 assists, 1.5 steals, and got the turnovers down a little bit, 3.8 turnovers per game, still a little bit higher. That's going to be there. I loved seeing him last night not really have many turnovers despite the number of assists that he had, and that's going to be part of that refinement. Again, you're playing against a Memphis Grizzlies team that's trash, so you shouldn't turn the ball over a lot against that team anyway. But Josh Giddey's a player that's growing as well. And we've seen Josh Giddey, again, the refinement that he's been able to add to his game has been legitimate. He still is growing. I know, typically, like I said, with Matas is around 23, 24. That's when you typically want to see a player really make that leap or that final refinement into what they're still adding to their game. Now, they can still add some stuff, but that's typically the 23, 24-year-old season is when you start seeing that from a player. Josh Giddey, as a player that hasn't been allowed to play his best position for the majority of his career, at point guard, maybe that's what you're looking at for him. But Giddey's averaging on the season 18 points, 8.4 rebounds, basically 9 assists per game on 45% shooting and 38% shooting from three-point range as well. You like to see all those things from Josh Giddey. The turnovers are up to 3.6 turnovers per game. I'll attribute some of that to, just him being risky with better teammates, stuff like that. Maybe you don't have as many of those turnovers. But Josh Giddey, again, another player that continues shows that he does have tremendous upside. He has all-star potential. And that's based off the numbers alone. You put up those type of numbers on a winning team, chances are you're going to get into the All-Star game eventually. The question is, can the Bulls win while he's doing that? And that's up to the team to put the right team on there. I'm not even necessarily putting that on Josh Giddey. So, it's good to see that these players are having the stretch that they are, because these are guys in Josh Giddey and Matas Buzelis who are absolutely part of the Bulls' future. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They are part of the immediate Chicago Bulls' future and probably part of their long-term future as well. So you want to see guys like that play at this level, and that's what I'm more kind of focused on than the win or losses, because again, not in our control. And yeah, even the players' play isn't in our control, but I want to see the players that, again, I want to see players on my team that actually want to win. I want to see players on my team that actually give a fuck about losing and try to go out there and put it all out on the court. And say what you will, over this last stretch, over this tanking part of the season, Josh Giddey and Matas Buzelis have cared. Now, some of that doesn't always mean that they've always performed extremely well, but they have cared about how this team has performed. They have cared about how this team has played. They do care about that. And I want players on my team that care. I don't want players on my team that are perfectly fine with tanking and just like, oh, we're just going to go out there and not give a damn. I want players that still find a way to play passionate. It'd be very easy for the Bulls players on this team right now to get down on themselves, out on themselves, and it completely be checked out. I want to see guys engage, and I want to see guys having fun out there. Whether they win, lose, draw, whatever happens, that's not on us. That's on the team. That's on the franchise. If the Bulls don't want players to win, find a way to sit their ass, is what I got to say about that one, right? But no, it is what it is. The Bulls they're 3-3 in their last 6. I know that's going to completely murder some people. They're 4-4 in their last 8, if that's what you want to look at it, right? They're 4-6 in their last 10. But regardless of that, like the Chicago Bulls, the players that are going to be on this team, they're playing well. And that's really all I want to see is them put in effort, and we can see what comes out on the other side of that. So that's just my personal opinion on it. But another guy that does deserve to get talked about is Leonard Miller. And I know people are probably like, damn, Haize brought up Rob Dillingham but didn't talk about Leonard Miller, because I want to have a kind of a more full-fledged conversation about Leonard Miller. And this is something that I had to educate myself on. I wanted to go and look at what Leonard Miller and what his draft prospect stuff was, right? Because I think that's important. When you find a player that doesn't find their way off the bench on a winning team, sometimes that could be because that player's just not good, the player's not living up to the standard, or that could be that that winning team doesn't have time to develop that guy. Now, we all know Leonard Miller was drafted 33rd overall in the second round, right? And that's the reality of it. That's the San Antonio Spurs actually drafted Leonard Miller with that. They then traded him to the Minnesota Timberwolves for 2 future second-round picks, right? And then you look at him, 6'10", 7'2" wingspan as well, huge athleticism. When he was within the G League Ignite playing next to Scoot Henderson, he averaged 18 points, 11 rebounds in 24 games with the G League Ignite, right? And so one of the questions with him coming into the draft was his three-point shooting, right? But aggressive rebounder, excellent finisher, intelligent cutter, transition threat, and can be a screener or ball handler in pick and rolls. That was his draft board. That was his draft prospect review, right? So when you look at that, and that's a toolsy modern day forward, and that's the good thing about it, right? Now you look at what Leonard Miller has shown here. He's shown a lot of those same things that were positive attributes for him in his draft profile. He's averaged over the last 3 games before last game, averaged 15.3 points, 9.3 rebounds, 1.3 steals, and he did that in 35 minutes per game as well, shooting 64% on 2. And, that's solid. Had a double-double against Golden State on March 10th, 17 and 11 there. That was a week ago at this point. Leonard Miller is flashing all of the tools that people in his draft analysis talked about him having. And what does that mean for the Chicago Bulls, right? When you look at the way the modern NBA is going, and this is part of the reason why I believe the Bulls did draft Noah Essinga where they drafted him at, you have a toolsy forward, and now you have 2 jumbo forwards in him and Miles Buzelis, both at 6'10", right? Then you also have Josh Giddey at 6'8" at point guard. If this Bulls team adds a decent-sized shooting guard next year, along with Noah Essinga and Jalen Smith playing the 4 and stuff, we start going from a team that we know played small for so long into a team that, can actually match with size, right? And so here's the thing, right? I'm not saying that, things have been amazing for the Chicago Bulls or anything like that as far as that, because we all know that's not the case. I wouldn't even try to sell y'all on something like that. But there is something about Josh Giddey, Miles Buzelis, and Leonard Miller when they're on the court together. And when you have 2 of your players that, again, as we talked about with Miles Buzelis and Josh Giddey, is that these are 2 players that are part of the Bulls' future. And so Leonard Miller fitting in with those guys, even if it ends up being, I'm not trying to push Leonard Miller as a future starter or anything like that, but I am trying to say that this is a guy, the reason why he's worth an investment, because this is a guy that, again, had tons of talent coming into the draft. Yeah, he went in the second round. We know the Ignite didn't always do a lot for not for Chicago Bulls, for the players that were there as far as actually developing their skill. But when I went back and looked at Leonard Miller's draft board and those type of things, and what his strengths and weaknesses were, you start seeing a player that always needed. He was always going to need some development. He was always going to be raw, but the tools were there that you look at him and say, like, hey, there could be a pretty damn good modern basketball player. Now, if he never ends up being a permanent starter, that's perfectly fine for where he's drafted at. But I'll say this, I'm not going to count it out either, right? I'm not going to put a limit on it. Like, he's not a perfect player. He has flaws. That's absolutely legitimate. He has flaws. Every player has flaws. And I hate when I see people when you talk positively about a player like, well, but that shot, or it's like, yeah, okay, all you're telling me is that he's not a perfect player. No shit. Did you think a player that was traded and thrown in as a additive in a bigger trade, do you expect them to be a perfect, flawless player? Like, no shit, he has flaws, right? But how much are you going to work on that? So far, Josh Giddey, Miles Buzelis, and Leonard Miller have played 93 minutes together. In those 93 minutes, we're a plus 25 with a net rating of plus 14, an offensive rating of 131, and a defensive rating of 117, right? And we're 3-3 in games that they play together. That's over 6 games. I'm not saying that that's going to hold out for a full season next year or anything like that, but I am saying that when you look at the data and when you look at the performance, there's a reason why you keep investing in him. That's elite size that he does have, multiple positions that he can play. Hell, we saw him at some small ball center at times, right? And so when you look at it as well, Josh Giddey, Miles Buzelis, Leonard Miller, right? Those are all guys that can attack the rim, they can finish, right? Especially with Josh Giddey or Trey Jones leading that break. You add Noah Essinga, you add a rim-running center threat to that as well, and I tell you what, you may have something there, right? As far as just more systematic, current, modern basketball. And that's what you're looking at if you run into that. So Leonard Miller is another guy that, like I said, most Bulls fans should be rooting for this guy. They should be invested in what happens or does not happen with him. And we'll end up seeing where that shakes out and where that leaves the Chicago Bulls. But for overall, Leonard Miller is a guy that I'm invested in now, being a Chicago Bull. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for Leonard Miller here in a Bulls jersey. Now, before we get out of here, I did a breaking news episode on this yesterday on the YouTube channel. Didn't post it as a podcast with the game going. I forgot. My bad, y'all. So I do want to cover this. Anfernee Simons and Jaden Ivey, we did get injury timelines on them. We heard that Anfernee Simons is going to be reevaluated in 10 days, right? Which means that when he comes back, the Bulls will roughly have about 10 games left on the schedule when he comes back. Now that 10 games started before yesterday's game. 10 days started yesterday, right? So he's going to come back with about 10 games left on the schedule if he's cleared by then. Now, I personally have my own conspiracy theory that he's not going to come back this season. They're probably going to leave him sitting out the rest of this way. But take that for what you will. Anfernee Simons is dealing with a left wrist injury, and he will be reevaluated in 10 days, so take that for what you will. Then we also got an update on Jaden Ivey also. And Jaden Ivey is going to be reevaluated in a week after going down with the Windy City Bulls, having a practice there. And that means that when he comes back, we'll have about 12 games left if he's cleared at that point in time, right? Now, we don't know if either one of these guys are going to be cleared. The language there being that they'll be reevaluated in 10 days and 7 days, I think is key because they can do that reevaluation and find they're still not ready to get back out there on the basketball court. And if that ends up being the case, it is what it is in that point, right? So we'll see what happens with these guys. It's good to have a more announced timeline so we can have expectations, and we'll see what happens. And the Bulls may very well look at it and say, hey, where are we at in the standings? By the time, before those guys come back to make a decision to clear them or not. But that's going to do it for today's episode, y'all. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, man. Let me know how you guys feel down below in the comments. Are you pro-tank? Are you anti-tank? But how do you feel about the young players on this team that we mentioned showing real growth over this stretch? How do you feel about that? How much of it do you think sustainable into next season? I want to know that for real, right? Because, again, me personally, as I've said before, I'm never mad at players playing to win. That's just my personal opinion. But make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell if you never want to miss an episode. You can also follow us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.